All successful athlete, successful athlete. Hey guys, Dusty here. Today I want to talk all about tapering for your next big race. The whole taper process for many runners, both beginner and experienced, can be quite difficult. And in this video, I'll go over some basic guidelines and give some of my own tapering tips that I've used before in the past. So first of all, the whole taper process is highly individual. How I taper is going to differ from how you taper and so on. A lot of that's going to depend on your fitness, your age, your experience, and finally the distance of the race that you're tapering for. So just as a basic guideline, the shorter the race, usually the shorter your taper can be. So let's just say you're training for a 5K, you might taper anywhere from only 5 days all the way up to a couple of weeks. And then if we go all the way up to a marathon, some athletes might taper for only 2 weeks, and some might start their taper 5 and even 6 weeks out from race day. And what taper means, quite simply, is just to reduce gradually. And as runners, the biggest thing that we're going to want to reduce during the whole taper process is your volume. So just to give a simple example, let's take an athlete and they're training for a half marathon and they're going to start their taper 3 weeks out. And let's just say this athlete usually runs 100 kilometers a week. Well, 3 weeks out from the race, they'll drop down to about 90% or 90 kilometers of training that week. In week 2, maybe they'll drop down to 70 to 80 kilometers. And finally, for race week, 1 week to go, they're going to be doing about half. So their normal 100 kilometer training week will now be all the way down to 50 kilometers. And this is just an example. Like I mentioned earlier, the whole taper process is very individual and it's going to vary from person to person. So one thing that I like to do during the whole taper process is keep the frequency of runs the same. So what that means is if you usually run 4 to 5 times a week, then when you're going through the whole taper process, keep your runs at 4 to 5 times per week. Obviously, just the runs themselves are going to be a lot shorter. Another important tip is that, yes, you're going to cut down on volume, but you don't want to cut down or eliminate completely intensity. So those harder or more high quality runs are still really important through the taper process. Oftentimes, if an athlete tapers and they totally eliminate any sort of quality running, then they'll show up to race day feeling flat and sluggish. So you're still going to keep some intensity, you're still going to be doing some tempo work, you're still going to be doing some race pace efforts. You could start incorporating some strides at the end of your workouts as well. You just want to make sure that you haven't gone the last few weeks leading into your race not revving the engine up at all, or else, like I mentioned, you're going to end up feeling flat and sluggish. Another thing you can focus on during the whole taper process is sleep. Now, ideally, we would all be making sleep a priority all the time. And as many of you know, sleep is the most important recovery tool. It's not while we're actually out there running that we get better. It's when our bodies are repairing themselves, and that happens mostly during sleep. So if it's something that's been lacking for you, make it a priority, especially going into the taper process. The last thing you want to be is an athlete standing on the start line who is exhausted, has a ton of sleep debt, never made sleep a priority. More than likely, you're going to underperform come race day. Another tip that kind of ties in with sleep is all about relaxing. You want to get to that start line as relaxed as possible. So during the taper process, especially that final week leading in, you're going to have a lot more time because you're not training as much. Now's a good chance to pick up a book that you've been wanting to read, maybe play a video game that you've been wanting to play. And one of my favorites is getting a race week massage. Now, this is absolutely not a deep tissue massage. You're not working any issues or knots out that close to a race. A race week with massage, at least for myself, is always purely relaxation. Next up is something that not near enough athletes do, and it's very important to do it all the time, but especially during the taper process, and that is to visualize race day. So yes, of course, it's important to visualize all the good things, having a great day out there, but it's also important to prepare and visualize if things go bad. So let's just say on race day, there's a torrential downpour. Is that going to change your race day shoe option? And do you have the appropriate gear to run? Are you going to be too cold if it's a torrential downpour? Do you have the appropriate waterproof gear if you need it? And on the flip side, what are you going to do if it's super hot out? Obviously, that should probably change your nutrition and hydration plan, especially if it's a longer race. And then also, speaking of nutrition and hydration, what are you going to do if in the first mile you drop all of your race day nutrition? Are you going to turn around and pick it up, or are you going to be okay using and hitting up all the whatever's available for you at the aid stations? So hopefully these are all hypothetical situations and all of you have great races. But crap happens on race day and it's important to be prepared for that. So we need to visualize that in the weeks leading into the race, just so you know what you'll do when crap hits the fan. So just as a quick review, I'm losing my light for this video. You're gonna cut volume. You're still gonna maintain a little bit of intensity so you're not feeling flat and sluggish come race day. I personally recommend keeping the frequency of runs the same. So if you usually run 4 times a week, keep your taper process at 4 times a week. Make sure that you're making sleep a priority, especially during this taper process. Do whatever you need to relax, play a video game, listen to some music, read a book, or my personal favorite, get a race week massage. And then lastly, I just went over it, make sure you're visualizing race day. Successful athletes are visualizing their events all the time, and it's important that you do the same, not only to visualize the good things, but to visualize and be prepared for what you're going to do when stuff goes bad. So anyways, those are some of my tips for getting you through your taper for your next big race. If you have any tapering tips that you like to do that I left out of my video, leave a comment down below so I can check them out. Thanks for watching. If you have a big race coming up soon, good luck to you, and I'll see you in the next video.